Hi, welcome back to Waxing On. Friday, we're wrapping up Beatles week, looking at 3 consecutive albums they made post Sgt. Pepper. As things are starting to wind down, or if you want to say fall apart, some classic albums were the product of that. I'm just going to bounce back a little bit to what we talked about Wednesday. We looked at the White Album, and I told you I have different formats. This is the CD version I have. And you can see they actually had the Beatles on there. It came with another sleeve over top of it that has the embossed version on it. A little different set of photos on the back of this one. You remember, same sort of setup, but all different poses. But inside the actual CD cover, we don't have the 8x10s anymore, but we have just a little small version of those photos I showed you on Wednesday. Now, also with this album, or I guess 2 CD set, came another booklet, and it's filled with photos, words to all the songs, little information about it. Some of the photos, things we didn't see on the original album. I don't know how many pages I have on here. It doesn't really tell me, but another nice bonus that we got with this, as well as, you may remember this, that's part of the poster I showed you. The poster that had all the pics on the one side and lyrics on the other. So you get a little bonus on this one with the CD collection. Again, something you don't get with streaming or digital downloads, but something else that came with that. So that was kind of nice. A little extra over what I had on the album. Okay, we're into their next album. Recorded next was Let It Be. Now, it got confusing in here because, again, if you go online and check it out, there's just so much information about what's going on with the band. There was turmoil. There was people splitting off. We had heroin addiction, I think it said, with Lennon and Yoko. Everything was going on that a lot of this got shelved and didn't get looked at right away. And that's why Abbey Road came out and then this, although this one started recording before Abbey Road. So it actually was the next one right after the White Album. And this was Paul pushing ahead, saying, let's get back and doing things like we used to do. Let's just play rock and roll. Let's forget about all the, the extra stuff and get back to basics. And that was what the idea of this album was. Now, here's the original Let It Be. Came out in 1970. Band recorded a lot of tracks. I'm just going to read you a little something on the back here to put it in perspective. It says, this is a new phase Beatles album. Essential to the content of the film, Let It Be was that they performed live for many of the tracks. In comes the warmth and the freshness of a live performance as reproduced for disc by Phil Spector. Now, Phil Spector's called in. McCartney didn't want him. Lennon and Harrison, they were all for it. Spector comes in and adds orchestrations and, his traditional wall of sound to a lot of the tracks. And, again, that didn't sit well with McCartney, and we'll come to that in just a second. Some classic stuff on here. I'll tell you, really, this was a great album. Even though it was recorded before Abbey Road, to me, the album felt like the final chapter. It felt like it deserved to be the last album we heard from them, more so than what I thought Abbey Road did. Abbey Road had some great songs on there. I mean, we had Let Us Come Together. We had George Harrison with Something, and Here Comes the Sun. McCartney with She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. There were some classic tunes on that album. And that album, the album cover, has been the most imitated cover of any. I mean, it really did capture the imagination of the people. It also promoted the continuing Paul is Dead theory. If you look at the cover, you've got Lennon in white representing the minister presiding. We've got Ringo in black as the Undertaker. We got Paul in bare feet going with the barefoot corpse, smoking with a cigarette in the wrong hand from his left hand. He had it in his right. Made people think there was a good indication it was an imposter. We had Harrison dressed in jeans and that as the grave digger. We had a license plate on a car down the road that said 28, well, it said 281F. They read it as 28F, being that Paul McCartney would be 28 if he had lived. You know, by the time the album, there was just so much on there. They were still doing that right up to the last release. Not so much in this one. This one I didn't hear a lot of that kind of stuff. This was just straight ahead rock and roll, great playing, Beatles doing their thing. A couple of tunes really stood out. I mean, we've got two by McCartney that are just legendary. I mean, they're some of the best I think he's written. Long and Winding Road, and of course, Let It Be. I mean, Let It Be, I don't know what you can say about that. It's just one of the great songs of all time. Let's go down the set list here. We've got 12 tunes. Two of Us, Dig a Pony, Across the Universe, Harrison's I, Me, Mine, Dig It, Let It Be, Maggie May, a traditional song arranged by Lennon and McCartney, I've Got a Feeling, One After 909, The Long and Winding Road, Harrison's For You Blue, and Get Back. Okay, there is another album came out around the same time. One of the producers, not George Martin, put together a sample one they called it Get Back that came out. I don't think it had a wide release. There might be a few out. I'm not sure just how it was different from here, but it's something just to mention. So I've got Let It Be, 1970. Now, 2003, McCartney's still not letting this sit. Doesn't like it, didn't like what they did with it. He wasn't what he wanted. He wanted to get back to the basic rock and roll, just record the band, got back together, and they created Let It Be Naked. We talked about this quite a few episodes ago. I'm just going to revisit here now for the people that are maybe the new to the series we're doing or haven't seen it or weren't aware there was two Let It Be albums. Okay, this one, all the Phil Spectorisms are gone. Orchestra's gone. It's just the basic band playing. I mean, there is some great stuff here. It's stripped down. It's just that raw energy and music. Now, on this one, I'll find my jacket here. The difference is a few tunes missing. On this one, we don't have Maggie May. And while we do have Dig a Pony, we don't have the song called Dig It. So a couple have been removed from it for the Let It Be Naked album. And this one came with a book as well. A lot of information in here. This is actually a 2 CD set, and I'll mention that in a minute here. Photos from the shoot. They said it was different with Abbey Road. They got back, and it was more amicable, although Lennon and McCartney were still at odds with a number of issues there on some of the songs. So you got lots of reading in here. You got some great photos. You got a commemorative book. And to me, both albums go well together. A chance to hear how it sounded in the original release, what Lennon and Harrison kind of wanted. We got Phil Spector's fingers in there. And then let's strip it down. Let's just go bare bones and see what the band really sounded like when it's just them out there playing Let It Be Naked. Two classic albums together. And like I mentioned before, to me, Let It Be just closed the chapter on the Beatles. It was a great ending album, although it wasn't intended to be. It kind of brought everything together, ended with a big bang. I mean, there's some classic tunes on there. I don't think there was one that was really not one of my favorites. So that's it for Beatles week. Post Sgt. Pepper's. We didn't talk about the soundtrack for Yellow Submarine, but we did look at the albums they created as the Beatles. Magical Mystery Tour, The White Album, Let It Be. And then their final release was Abbey Road, but I'm going to leave that out only because this was the three where things were really changing. Really, Abbey Road was kind of a whole different feel. It was back to the pop music. It was a little different than what we had here. Now, if you remember, I talked about the Let It Be video a while ago, and it showed some of the scenes from here. And some of the songs from the album Abbey Road, I think of Octopus's Garden. In the Let It Be video, it showed how George Harrison was trying to help Ringo work out some lines in there and, get the harmonies, get the chords right, get the verses right. it was a lot of cooperation going on in there. In these, I don't think so much. Here, there was still a lot of that kind of infighting going on, and they were trying to get what they wanted, but everybody had their own little agenda. But in spite of all that, 3 classic albums came of it. Let It Be being, again, one of my favorites on my top 3. I mentioned before, it's Meet the Beatles, early Beatles. White Album, Let It Be. If I could only have 3, that'd be them. Hope you check them out. You'll find them on streaming networks. If you're lucky enough to get a hard copy, you're in luck. You got some nice add-ons with it. Even the Beatles White Album, if you can't get the original hard copy, big one, the CD had some nice additions to it. An extra booklet and the poster and the color photos, although in a smaller size. You can't put them up, frame them, or stick them on your wall, but you still got that piece of history there. Thanks for joining us for Beatles Week. That's it. Everybody have a great weekend. Take care. Stay safe. We'll see you on Monday.